All right, so today I want to make. I've been noticing this anti-pattern that I've been seeing in Remix where people have been using outlet to make modals, and in my opinion, that's a little bit of an anti-pattern. Let's talk about the reason why first. So I'm just gonna go to Excalidraw or something like that. Actually, I don't even really need Excalidraw. What I really just need is just some text. Okay. So let's say this is just a random app. I don't even worry about it. Let's say we have some routes. All right. For the last route I was in, we had restaurants. We had, or actually, the main one was dashboard. And then from dashboard, we would have dashboard, restaurants, restaurant ID. And then maybe we would have dashboard sections, section ID, maybe dashboard menus, whatever. Menu ID. Okay. So the problem is, if I want to now say that on this, the way that we should render a modal is like a function of this pattern. Well, I could make it to where if I go dashboard, restaurants, restaurant ID slash, maybe we'll just say some other ID, maybe of something we delete, and then that becomes a modal. Or like we could call it modal or dialogue or whatever you want to call it. So we could do dialogue. The problem is, in my mind, this means a couple of things. First of all, it means I'm going to have to create a route for a modal everywhere. So, for example, if I want a modal on this one, I would need to go restaurant ID. So maybe I want it for section ID. So now I need to create another modal component. Now this is another route I need to set up. Right? Another problem with this that I foresee is I've had circumstances where I want to change the routing strategy. So for example, actually what you're seeing here, this is kind of the routing strategy for the app I have. Just to give you some context, the app that I have is called Remenu, and it kind of looks like this. So right now I have a dashboard, restaurants, and then restaurant ID, dashboard, menus, menu ID, whatever. But the idea here is that, like, at some point I actually changed my flow. In fact, I used to have it to where if you wanted to render a menu technically belongs to a restaurant, so I had the route kind of look more like this. Restaurants, restaurant ID, menus, menu ID was a strategy. Now here's the thing. With the outlet modal strategy, that modal is now tied to the order in which these things go. So if I want to make a refactor in how these routes look, that means I'm going to have to refactor that modal thing also, which is kind of going to be a pain in the butt probably. So what I propose instead of this is pick a route where you're going to have your modals pop up. So for me, it's all going to happen in dashboard. Modals are not going to pop up in other places. And if they are, I'll probably want to style them differently. So I'm not going to render the same modals there. So what I did instead was I created a modal engine. The way that this looks in my app, which let me just pull up my app real quick, some of the code for it. Hopefully I don't reveal anything secret. Sorry. Get rid of that schema. So for my app, let's go to, whoops. In my dashboard.tsx, what we can see here is that I have, is it in dashboard? Maybe it is an index. Maybe I lied. Maybe I didn't put it in dashboard. So let's see. If it's an index, thought it was in dashboard. Oh, you know what? I have it abstracted away a little bit, so it's in the dashboard loader. I probably shouldn't really have this here. Something to be cleaned up at some point. So here's the idea. I have a request that I'm getting in now. And what I am doing with that request is I am parsing out the params off of that. So this is important. And actually, I realized I could totally get this from params. This is a mistake here. I really could just get this from params. And to be fair, I wrote this before I really started. I think I could actually do... Yeah, params would be a much better way of getting this. So please don't judge me too much. This was when I first started learning Remix that I actually set this up, believe it or not. And ever since I've seen this like whole outlet as a modal thing, I haven't really, you know, paid that much attention to it. But the idea is that what you instead do is, if I want to render a modal, whatever route I have doesn't matter. At the end of it, I have a catch-all that is grabbing these params. And I can add things like, oh, okay, show modal, true. Oh, okay, if you are going to show modal, what's that modal type going to be? Whoops, sorry, this would be an and I'll comment this out. True. And then maybe we say and modal type equals some sort of modal type. So for me, we'll look at what those are. Right now, I really only have one circumstance. I'm actually going to build a whole thing from scratch, and actually, this is giving me the idea to refactor my code. It's been a while since I've looked at it. So you know what? Let's just go ahead and start something from scratch. Feel free to skip around. It's going to take a minute to start this up, so that's totally okay. So I'm going to get rid of this. Don't save this. Don't save her. She don't want to be saved. Don't save her. Just kidding. Shout out to J. Cole. All right. So I'm going to CD back here, and we are going to... What is the command? We'll just make a blue stack. Actually, we don't even want blue stack, really, because then I have to deal with Prisma. But maybe it'd be good to have some data in there. So we're going to go indie stack. Remix. We're just going to build this real quick, because that's SQLite, so it'll run faster. So we're just going to go ahead and... By the way, huge shout out. This is such a good idea. Like, if I'm being 100% honest, Remix boilerplate is just the best I've experienced so far. I've done some stuff in Blitz. I've done some stuff in Rails. I've done some stuff in TRPC. Create T3 app, which, by the way, is awesome too. But I have to say, Remix stacks, I've had much more pleasant experiences with. Because you get like the auth shit right off the bat. I love it. Anyways, gonna copy this. We're gonna call it... Excuse me. And I've got about an hour here. Doop. Jump on it. Jump on it. Jump on it. We're gonna call this query modal example. And we're gonna do this in TypeScript. Yes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go with the default notes app that they create for you. And maybe what we can do is we can put up a modal that says like, are you sure you want to delete your modal? Or delete your note or something like that before. So I guess the idea would be instead of clicking on delete, it deletes it. Maybe we render a modal that says, are you sure you want to delete it? And then maybe we can make another type of modal at some point. I'm also going to go turn off some background noise so that way you don't have that the whole video. Much better. And I got a cleaner voice going on here, so hooray. It's taking a while to install this faker stuff. I could have just skipped the testing probably. This is taking a while. Please use rollup Morgan inject. Weird, I just pressed enter and it worked. Whatever. Press enter. Cool. Oh. So we're going to open up query modal example. And you're going to see actually the code that I'm about to write is probably cleaner than the code I just showed you. I need to actually go and refactor that code. It's been a while since I even looked at it. It's just, this got sparked from a discussion that I saw. So I figured this would be a fun thing to do tonight. So if I go over to, let's look at what's going on here. I think I should have notes or something. Let's go ahead and run this app. I might need to do an npm run build first. Let's see. Okay, cool. It's running. If I go to localhost 3000, log in. I think it's Rachel at remix.run. Password is password. Password is Rachel is cool, I think. Now I can approve of this password, and also I can also approve of dating girls named Rachel, given the fact that, yes, the girl who lives with me right now, who I very much so care deeply about and love, is named Rachel. Probably not the same Rachel. I hope not. If it is, I apologize. It's not. All right. So here, if I delete it, it just kind of gets deleted. So let's make the feature that we're trying to build. We pop up a modal that says, are you sure you want to delete it? Okay. So let's start on this. So what I would do here, and I'm very open to like improvements on this. I'm sure that there are improvements, but this is just, you know, one way of doing it that I think is a good idea. Let's go to our notes page, and actually, let's do it on our index page. So out here, we need a modal. So I'm just going to make a little class called modal. We're going to extract this in a second. Oh, I guess I could do, since it's Tailwind. I don't really do Tailwind that often. But we're going to say with, do I have Tailwind plugin? Let me get the Tailwind plugin, because I don't use Tailwind very often. With, come on. I thought it was like that. There we go. Width 20, height 20. This should be BG. We're gonna make it that for now. And let's just see if it shows up. Hi, I'm a modal. Okay. So hopefully it should show up. Since it's not, I'm wondering if that's because of the routing here. Like, I don't know that this actually shows up on the notes page. It's probably root that I want this on. In fact, I'm actually going to put this on, I bet you Notes has its own main. Yeah, see, Notes has its own main. Okay, so we're just going to do this on Notes for now. It obviously is going to depend on where you put this on your app, but you do need to make sure that the outermost relative thing, like in this case, I guess what we really want this around is the whole thing. So if I just do a BG red, and this is really going to depend on your routing strategy and how you do this. Oh, BG red. strange. I just want to get an idea of... I think that this will work. We'll find out. But just real quick. This thing is going to be absolute BG. We'll just say width 20. Height 20. Okay, cool. So at least it's in there. Obviously, it's got to be bigger than that. With, how big does it go? I don't even remember. With 1/2. Let's go with 1/2 here. Cool. So there's a modal. I think you could do... What's the best way to center this thing? Without having to change this necessarily. Oh, it's a flex already. I don't want to do an align item center. I don't know. For now, we'll just do... I think I could do margin left. Is there a... I think there's a way to do... You know what? I think I could just do a... No, I'm horrible at this. Let's see. For now, I'm just going to do a margin left massive and just make it approximately in the center. I know if you're here, it's probably not for the CSS. So it's going to be approximately in the center. Oh, whoops. There we go. This is not... There's definitely a better way of styling this. So by no means am I trying to say that this is what you should do for styling it. I just want to show the modal rendering strategy. So I'm going to make this 64. Cool. That's my modal. It's beautifully in the center. Instead of having this be BG red, we're going to give it border border black. Isn't there like a border width? I thought there was like a border width. Yeah, there's a border 2. That'll do. I was like looking at border 1. Okay, cool. So now we have a little modal. Now we just need to choose whether or not it's there. So we could just say hidden equals false while it is not hidden, and hidden equals true. I'm sorry, the opposite. Hidden equals true when it is hidden. Hidden equals false when it's not hidden. Okay, cool. So here's our modal component. Let's abstract this. This is going to go in. For me, I mean, you can put it wherever the hell you want. For now, I'm going to say modals, and we're going to say we could say that this thing is a React functional component. Which means it's going to have children. And then it's also going to take in a property of whether or not it's open. And then here, We could destructure this out. So we could just say, oh, if it's open. Weird, it didn't like that. Children goes there. Hidden is going to be open. If it's open, it will not be hidden. If it's not open, it will be hidden. Property children does not exist on type open boolean. I thought this did the trick, but maybe it's because it's not imported. Am I missing something? I thought this automatically filled out children for you. Weird. Interesting. All right, well, that's okay. We'll just say that children is a... I'm wondering if it's because... This could be crazy, but will that do it? No. That's strange. All right, whatever. I thought it automatically filled out children, but I guess not. Okay, cool. Sweet. Oh, I see. So let's do this. That should make that. And in here, we'll replace this. Cool. All right, so now we have our little modal. Let's actually make its background white. Or it should be like a white smoke or something. That way it just actually renders its own thing. So the goal here is to like have a warning or something like that. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna go to our notes page. In here, we're going to just say, for right now, something will go here. And you know what? It wants a JSX element because I did poor typing. That's okay. Something will go here, trust me. So I want to make it to where when I click this delete button, it pops this up. Let's figure that out. Let's make this false for now. The first thing that we need to do is we need to go to an individual note, which is going to be right here. And we need to go to this delete button. Await delete note in this action. So we're not exactly going to do it like this anymore. That's okay. It's going to be largely unused. This button, instead of being a delete button, it's going to be a link. And the link is going to be to the current route plus some params. So what I might do, this might not be the most remixy way of doing it, given the fact that we're not using forms, whatever. But it is a nice way if you want these like modals in your routes. So what you can do is, I mean, I'd actually be curious to get feedback on this, but what I would do is I would do a link here, and I'm sure there's a more optimized way of doing this. Sorry, let me just fill out these properties. So it's going to be, I don't know if this works. We could say modal type. Probably don't need to show modal actually. Equals, let's say, delete note confirmation. Or let's actually be good about this. I think it's probably better to not use like capitals in URLs. Modal type equals delete note confirm. Something like that. Right? Anchors must have content and the content must be a screen reader. Right. I don't know what screen reader means in this context, but we're going to say delete note here. And if I'm right, when I click this delete note, it should add those query params. Cool. So now that it's added those query params, the idea is going to be we use those query params to figure out what component to render. So in this case, I think what we want to do is we want to go to our notes, and in this loader function, see how we have note list items in here? Well, guess what? We can get our params, and in these params, we could say modal type is going to equal modal params indexed at modal type. And let's just go ahead and console.log that modal type for now. Make sure we're hitting it. Right? So I'm going to refresh this, and hopefully we should get a modal type. Undefined. That's console.log params. Note ID. So it doesn't get me the query params. Interesting. Okay, so maybe I was right for doing this. That's okay. Not a big deal. Because you can still get the request.url. So this is exactly then what I had to do in my app. So maybe I was right. Maybe the refactor was not necessary. Yeah. So basically what we could do is we could say const query params should equal a request.url. So what I think we could do is just new URL search params from the request URL. And now what we could do is probably say like console.log query params dot get, and actually we could just do this here. Okay, so I'm just going to refresh this a couple times. And it doesn't seem like it's oh, because I never console.logged anything. Refresh a few times. And we're getting null. That's okay. Let's console.log query params, because I'm wondering if I'm messing something up. Delete note confirm. Oh. Ah, because this needs to be URL dot. Oh, if the URL is just a string, I need to do this. Is that right? Oh, I could just do that, actually. Let's see. And let's try refreshing this. Cool. Now we have this little object where we can get modal type and get the other stuff. So in other words, now what I can do very easily is I can say from this, like, okay, what's the modal type I'm passing through? So one thing I might do here is, just for the sake of kind of ease on the front end, what we could do is we could say, oh, my modal type is going to equal, if the modal type exists, than that. Otherwise, it's going to equal null. And I think that'll make it a little easier to handle on the front end. So now what I should be able to do is say, let's just get my const, modal type. Well, actually, we don't ever really need to do that. Now, in this modal container, what we can do is, whether or not it's open, we could say is a factor of data.modal type. And basically, if that exists. Right? So let's see if I'm right there. If I get rid of this, no modal. If I put that on, modal. Hooray. We've gotten a good chunk of the way there. This is really good already. Because now we have the ability to not only have a modal, but we can also select different modal types. Which is pretty cool, right? Now what we can do is, in this modal container, maybe we can select, okay. Another thing we could do is, we can make a type for this modal type. And the value here is that maybe you only want, a select certain amount of modals, like, and you can keep track of them. So, for example, we could say type modal type. What's our first one? Well, it is delete note confirm. That's the very first one we have. Delete note confirm. Sweet. So that's the first type of modal we want to pop up. Awesome. So now in here, what we could do is say, I'm just going to do a little React fragment so it's happy. And I'm sure there's plenty of cleaning that could happen here. I have about 30 minutes left to finish this example. But in here, what we can do is we can have, like, okay. First of all, let's also now send this thing as a modal type, which means that now what we can do is say something like, and actually if we want, we could actually, I actually kind of like the idea of not calling this thing a modal container. Let's call it a modal. Just because it'd be nice to handle that logic in a different spot. So this is not a super important refactor. There's a million ways you could code this. This is just what my brain's moving towards right now. So I have this modal, and now what we're going to do is we are also going to pass in a modal type. Doesn't really need children anymore, so that's good. Makes that whole situation easier. We could say modal type equals, and we don't even really need open actually, because if you remember right, we were basically just, if we have a modal type, it's gonna be open. If we don't have a modal type, it won't be open. So we're gonna destructure modal type, and we're gonna call this a modal type, which maybe instead of, let's see. Oh, I was in the wrong spot. Sorry. Modal. Whoops. Notes. So what we're going to do is we are going to move this from here to here. We're going to export it. And now we should have a problem here. And now we should be able to cool. So now this modal is kind of like switching. I guess the goal is to switch between all of our stuff. And obviously I need to fix some stuff because I have open in here, which I'm surprised it's not linting. Which is strange. And voila. And now in here we can have this logic that's like, okay, what are my different modal types? Let's just render those. The tricky part is, yeah, the remix paradigm is not going to be that you're going to have a loader for your modal. I think that that's the right Kool-Aid to drink so you avoid having an anti-pattern in my mind. So it's interesting. I'm not saying that this is this comes with its own complexities. I think it's ultimately a better idea that's going to scale better as you happen to have more and more modal types that you have. So that way you don't have to create a new route for each one. The difference here is that now, let's say the next thing we're gonna create is like a confirm delete note, right? That's basically gonna be a form. So I can basically go in here, new folder. In this case, it's really not a big deal, actually. And in fact, I think... Well, no, that wouldn't work, I don't think, because the action... Yeah. So, the tricky part is now you have to make a route that sort of corresponds with this. And that's okay. It's really not that hard to do. So, let's make like a API route. Delete note.ts. And basically all you're going to do is you are going to copy the code from like here, whatever this was before, which this, I'm just going to paste it down there for now, and then I could redo exactly where I was at. So now in here, and then maybe we'll have another button. Oh, let's make it a link. I guess what we would do is we would set it to notes or something like that. You can come up with a fancier way to do that, or cancel, right? And now in my modal, I could import that. We're probably going to have to precede it with an ID, but let's just, start it off. So if I click delete here, right? Now I have this delete or cancel. I think you could actually... See, this is where I'm going to mess it up, but my hunch is we should be able to see this with a restaurant ID. Or a node ID. Oh, whoops. Right? So now that's going to be mad at me. Let's see. Confirm delete note. So this is, in the past, this is where I've had to set up a bunch of, this is where the logic gets a little bit complicated, but it's really not that bad, which is you can do a check. So in other words, when instead of doing like a modal type here, we could say type modal props. We can say action is that, and then we can say maybe like note ID will be a string or something like that. Is it string in this? Yeah, it's a string. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to check. Again, I didn't really prepare this super well. So now what we could do is we should have a little bit of typing helping us. But this is where you're going to have, it's going to get a little sloppy in the sense that you have to do some if logic, whatever. In other words, now what I'm going to have to say is, and actually let's call this delete node ID. And we could say cool. We could say it equals I like doing instantly invoked functions, so that's just how I'm going to do this. We could say modal props equals so we're going to say if delete node ID, or we could say if modal type, and we could say has modal props, this we're going to need to import. We'll call this modal action. It's probably better. So now I could say something like, oh, okay, if this modal action equals that, and you know, you could probably do a lot of this with like a Zod schema or something like that. Would probably be a lot more efficient. But for now, it's just going to be ugly and dirty and quick. If not, delete note ID, return null, else return. We could say, and I like to do this so we could say action equals delete node confirm, delete node ID equals delete node ID. So actually that's done. Cool. If all that fails, return null. Again, not the most elegant thing. Now we can infer the type of modal props. So in this case, we could say this thing takes in modal props, and maybe we could say modal props can also be null, which I don't know if that's actually going to throw off on here. Nope, it looks okay. Oh, no, it doesn't like that. You can't just do modal props indexed at action. So what we could do is there's some fancy TypeScript stuff. We could say const actually we could do this equals we just will register the actions. What's the best way of doing this? For now, it's not going to be the... This is a little bit of code duplication. I'm sure there's a better way. But for now, we're just going to do this. So we're going to say... Cool. We now have modal action. We could probably say that this could be, no, it can't be null. So cool. Everything should work here. Modal type is going to equal and then in, oh, and it should be modal props. There we go. So now we have modal props being sent, and that's just because, okay, well, we need to supply the ID. So this is good because, okay, well, this is null. If it's not valid, if you're not making a valid request. So if you notice, it's not actually going to work right now. But if I were to say, and what was it? Delete note ID, right? Equals, hey there. Now it shows up. Cool. And maybe you could do a console.error if you wanted to. Like, and all this probably seems like a lot of work, but the cool thing is, as you add new modals, it's actually not that much work. We already have a strategy. All this is confirming that all the props are there for one thing. So effectively, if you wanted to add a new thing, you just add the if statement for that one. You get the stuff from the loader. You load it up. Anyways, so now that I have this, I can pass in. We could very easily do like see how we have this action here? So we could do basically just a switch. We could say, and I'm just going to do this instead of a switch. It's same kind of idea. We will say modal props dot action equals delete note confirm and confirm delete note. Node ID is modal props dot delete node ID. And this is okay because once we know, this is called a discriminated union in TypeScript. In other words, once we know that this thing is here, we know this thing's here too. Cool. So now we have this thing working. Right? All we need to do is get that confirm delete note to work, which I think that I could just take this action and route it to /notes/ oh no, oh, it's this. Action would be I think that'll work. Let's find out. Ah, I never fixed that link. So now here we could do something like what was it called? Delete note confirm? No. Delete node ID. And actually, just out of curiosity, am I getting that console.error? No, I'm probably getting that on the... Yeah, I'm getting that on the back end, though. So that's cool. At least it's something. delete node ID equals, and we're going to set that equal to awesome. So if I click delete note here, on my first note, delete, and now we don't have a note. So cool. This is a strategy for doing this. Let's make a new note. New note. Yay, I'm a new note. Cool, let's make a few of them. Cool. Now, this is not a good idea for something to make, but let's just say I want to make a different type of modal. Let's say I want to make a modal where, like, I want to have, maybe I could just edit the name really quick in a modal. It's not the greatest idea for a UI, right? But let's just entertain that for a second. One thing I could do is now I can go to that notes and maybe we could come up with a new, and actually I can go to that modal. Let's come up with a new one. We're going to say our, whoops, next action is going to be edit note name. And the note ID is going to be a string. Cool. So now we could go here and we'll make another one, call it edit note name. And the truth is we could probably just make this note ID, but whatever. We'll call this, we'll stay consistent. We'll call it edit note ID. But really we could just probably do one note ID, and if that's not there, whatever, I don't know. However you want to do it, there's a whole lot of flexibility in how you actually accomplish this same thing as me. Oh, I don't need this. Whoops. Now what we could do is we could say if modal props dot action equals edit note name, we could just put in for now div. Also, I don't know why that quote showed up. Oh, I see what's going on. Div, and we'll say edit note name. Right? This is going to be a little more complex to make, but we can make it work. So now let's make a link to that. If I go to node ID, we have this link for that. And you know what? Let's put a little bit of styling on it. We're just going to make it BG blue. Or we're going to make it BG red because it's delete. Now that is a gorgeous note right there. We're going to give it a little bit of P, I don't know, P5, P4. That did the trick. Cool. That looks good. Cool. All right, so we have a little delete note. Now let's make a edit note name. And this probably needs to be blue. Works for me. Cool. So now we have an edit note name, and this, instead of going to delete note, we could say, I think I called it edit note name, right? We'll find out. See if this works. Oh no. Probably because I don't have the logic for it. So now it's as easy as like, oh, okay. In this little instantly invoked function, if modal action equals edit note name, and you see how TypeScript's helping me out. Cool. If, what did we call it? Edit note ID. Normally I hate nested if statements. I would probably in the future find a way around this, but I think it's pretty obvious what this is doing in this case. So it is what it is. Let's go ahead and return our action now is going to be, we can say as modal props. So that way we get that type. Edit node name. Edit node ID. Cool. And then in our modal, we're still just passing in that modal props. So hopefully that'll work. And hey, look, it worked. So now we have our modal there. And that modal goes away as soon as we go like this. Right? So edit node name, it's there. How do we get all the details of that node? Ooh, that's a good question. Sounds like a use fetcher problem. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to try and figure that out. So now we're going to make a new form. We're going to call it the edit note name .tsx. Now in my mind, this is going to need to come from, we're going to need to get some information from that ID. So we're definitely going to need the node ID. And that node ID is going to be a string. And I probably should have destructured it first, but whatever. Node ID, bam. Now in here, we can also return a form. The only thing that's tricky about this is that now we're going to have to figure out how to get the data from that form. So we can't get it from that loader anymore. Fortunately, there's a whole bunch of useful ways around that Remix provides for you. So it's not like you're SOL. You're actually perfectly okay. I'll prove it in the next 10 minutes, hopefully, because my girlfriend gets off work in 10 minutes. My Rachel gets off work in 10 minutes. So we're going to give it as a method of, I guess, patch, right? I'm not sure. I think it's patch. And then we're going to give it a input, type text. It's going to have a default value. Where's that default value going to come from? That default value is going to have to come from somewhere. For now, we're going to say, oh, well, let's give it current note name and just see if we get something here. Probably because we're not rendering it. So we're going to call this edit note name. And guess what? Our node ID can equal, just like before, modal props dot edit node ID. So now we have a current note name. Of course, it's just an ID, and we're going to need to get data. So what the heck, man? Well, we should be able to get it from use fetchers. So, for example, I should be able to say something along the lines of, when I was first starting out Remix, this was one of those things that felt like a big knowledge gap to me, which was this idea that my data always has to come from my loaders creates a really weird coupling to where data always has to flow down the pipeline, and I can't just think about, oh, this component fetches its own data. I will say that I think for many, many use cases, use fetchers sort of solves that. So, or use matches or something like that. Or is it use matches? Use matches? Use matches. So that's what we're going to do. what we can do is we could find data from another loader by using use matches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const matches equals use matches. And then I'm just going to console.log matches, since we don't have a whole shit ton of data anyways. All right, so all that I do is I have 3 things. Each of these represents a route. I have route, routes, notes, note ID. So that means all I need to do is find the one that is routes, notes, note ID. So we could say const, we'll say note ID fetcher equals, or data, we'll call it match, equals matches dot find match, where match dot ID equals that. Routes, notes, note ID. Really nice little utility. Cool. We could say if not note ID match, probably throw an error. You shouldn't be using edit note name outside the scope of so cool. Oh. Maybe we don't want to do that. Interesting. Am I getting it right? Huh. I think I was right before what I did. Huh. Weird. Strange. All right, well, we're not going to do that for now. But it's going to give us some helpful type errors anyways. So now we have this, and then what we should be able to do is something like default value equals and I think I could say there's a way to strongly type this. I actually don't know how. Let's look at what's in there. So we get data, and then it has a note. So what we could do is just, for now, we serialize it, and it's mad. Maybe, or undefined. Cool. And now what I should be able to do is say that the default value is node ID match dot data dot note dot title. Sure. So now I get that default data, and let's just make a. This is an input, so I guess we'll make the border. We'll put a border on this because it looks pretty terrible. Let's do a label. HTML4 title, right? And then I personally think I'm not too concerned about styling, but I also want it to be clear what's happening. So here. Oh. Flex. This is we're gonna say flex call With I thought there was a width full. Yeah. It's my BG. Oh, I also need a height full. Cool. And PX 20. Cool. Oh, it's because this is supposed to be item center, I think. There we go. Cool. This also looks like it could be wrapped in a div. Cool. And then we could also do justify center. Alrighty, this is my beautiful little form, right? So now, I don't have an action for it, but I can very easily submit an action in the same way that I could before, and I'll prove it. So, whereas, let's see. In my node ID, this action is just delete note on here. So what we could do is say request dot method equals delete. We do all this stuff. And we could say if request dot method equals patch console.log hit, right? And from here, we need to say that the method is patch. And the action needs to be notes, right? Is that what it was on the delete form? Yep. So now on here, if I click this, I should get a hit or something like that. Oh wait, no, it needs to be on a submit on this. So let's make a... Cool. Method not allowed. Did I get a hit? .405, method not allowed. Interesting. Why am I getting that? Oh, this is a post on delete. Will the delete work still? Let's see. If I do delete. Delete. No, it did not work. Probably because this should be a delete method on here. Oh, see, it is action note ID. That's exactly what it is. I'm being stupid. Okay. The link is to notes. That's what I did wrong. So I need to go to notes. Right? And also, in my confirm delete note, this really should be a delete. I actually don't know why it wasn't before anyways, but let's see if this works. Weird. Please return a value or null. An action for route, but it didn't return anything from your action function. So weird. Strange. I have some sort of problem on here. Oh, I think I'm... So it is delete. Oh, look at that. See if that fixes it. Yep, that fixed it. That's weird. Because I could swear I didn't even write that. Oh, there you go. Okay, so in here... Wow, what a silly... I guess it's all caps. Okay. So now what I should be able to do here is if it's patch, I should be able to say delete note. So we could just probably say await note or prisma dot note dot update where ID equals params dot node ID and title equals, oh wait, the data is going to be title equals params.title. And that means I also need to make sure that in here I'm sending that out too. So I have a default title and the action is to node ID, so that should work. So hopefully if I'm in here, new note name or edited note name, submit, title not found. Because I did not give this thing a name of title. And that should do the trick. So edit new note name, edited note name, and title not found still. Interesting. Why would the title not be found? If I have a name of title, let's just look at this and just make sure I'm not crazy. This goes to notes and then note ID. I would have thought that it would have gotten that. Oh, because I don't think it gets it from the params. I think it gets it from the request. So you just have to pull it out differently. But this would be the same whether or not you did it on a loader or whatever. So just real quick, going to note ID, you would just need to, let's see. I need to go to my action. I could say title is not found because it's not coming from the params. It's coming from form data, and then dot get title. And we're just going to hack it. We could say just do a quick check there. Here you can just say throw new error. And then, bam. Hopefully that works. Edit new node name. And look at that. There we go. Edited node name. Bam. So now what we have is we have two different types of modals. I think y'all could see, like, the vast majority of the work I did to get the new modal in there had nothing to do with actually creating a new modal. It was creating the action for it. And in reality, like, it's actually not that hard to keep adding modals on top of this, and more modals and more modals and modals. The way that I kind of think about it is that I actually built a modal engine for my app. And now, whenever that modal engine basically just takes in QueryParams, and from there, it's just components that I dump inside of that modal thing. So, I don't know, I'm curious what y'all think, but this is kind of the way that I've set it up. I'm going to go ahead and post this to GitHub. In fact, let me do that now. I'm just going to go to github.com/new, and I'm going to say remix query modal example. We'll say remix query modal example, and I will post the YouTube video to this in there, and make this public. Description. QueryParams is a great way of rendering modals in Remix. I think another totally acceptable way that I just want to call out real quick, another totally acceptable way of rendering modals is also just like client side. Like, that's totally fine. If you have a use case to where you need to be able to send someone a modal and it pops up, I don't know when I'm going to encounter that. But I figured since I already went through all of the work to sort of have this modal engine, it's really, I already kind of did the hard part. But it's really not super hard to set up. So if anyone's curious, this is my solution. I stand by it for now. I get that it has its flaws. It's not perfect. I think ultimately it's gonna... Not a Git repository. Wow, I should have really been paying attention. So now if I go here, bam, and I'm actually going to respond in a thread in a bit. First, I'm going to upload this to YouTube. So cool beans. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's all I got. Wait.